The air in the courtroom is refrigerated, a dry and institutional cold that smells of lemon oil wax, and the high-pitched hum of overhead lights. I sit alone. No lawyer, no files, no paper shield, just the stiff fabric of my Class A uniform and a nameplate that my father is currently trying to melt off my chest with his stare. Arthur Baxter doesn't shout. Men like him don't have to. He sits at the mahogany table, looking immaculate in a charcoal suit that costs more than my annual pension, his silver hair catching the sterile glow from above. He looks like a pillar of the community. He speaks like an executioner. "My daughter is a ghost," he says, his voice a low, steady frequency that carries to the back of the gallery. The uniform is a costume. She never served. She fled to Europe to escape her own instability, and now she has returned to steal a legacy she abandoned years ago. The words hit like a physical weight, a public erasure of every mile I marched and every wound I stitched in the dark. It is a total betrayal, a lethal lie spoken with the quiet confidence of a man who owns the room. Across the aisle, my parents sit surrounded by the high society machinery of a 5-man legal team and leather-bound ledgers. I am an island of olive drab in a sea of pinstripes. I keep my hands flat on the table to hide the tremor beneath my skin. I breathe in the scent of floor polish and forced silence, my jaw locked in a soldier's stoicism. I am a nonentity in their world, a psychotic break, a fraud. Then the gavel taps, a dull, concussive thud. I look up, and for a fraction of a second, the world stalls. Judge Sterling is watching me. His gaze lingers on my combat medic badge just a moment too long, a flicker of recognition crossing his unreadable face. It is a look that doesn't belong to a courtroom. It is a look that defies the truth currently being told. The spring is compressed, the debt is noted, and for the first time, the cold doesn't feel so permanent. The afternoon sun through the high, arched windows of the Portsmouth County Courthouse is a strategic deception. It casts long, golden rectangles across the floor, promising a warmth the interior refuses to provide. Inside, the air is climate-controlled to a sterile chill. It smells of heavy lemon oil wax, old vellum, and the high-pitched, metallic hum of an overburdened HVAC system. This is my father's natural habitat, a world where reality is negotiated, and truth is whatever a man in an expensive suit can convince a gallery to believe. I sit at the respondent's table. My back is a vertical line. My hands are flat on the polished mahogany. I am wearing my Army Class A uniform. The fabric is stiff. The brass buttons reflect the cold light of the room like dull eyes. I feel like a foreign object inserted into a pristine machine. Across the aisle, my father, Arthur Baxter, sits with his legal team. He doesn't look at me. He looks at the judge with the expression of a man who has been forced to perform a tragic but necessary duty. "She didn't leave to serve her country, Your Honor," my father's attorney, Julian Vane, begins. His voice is a smooth, predatory baritone. "She left to escape the responsibilities of the Baxter legacy. My client's daughter suffered a documented period of instability 3 years ago. What she calls enlistment was, in reality, a self-imposed exile, a psychotic break that led her to vanish into the shadows of Europe, while her father worked himself to the bone to save this family from the ruin she left behind. The validation gap opens like a canyon beneath my feet. To the judge and the spectators, I am a broken girl, a liability. They see my silence as a lack of defense, perhaps even a tacit admission of the instability Vane is describing. They don't understand that my silence is tactical. It is the soldier's stoicism. In the field, noise is a luxury that costs lives. You don't argue with the wind, you adjust your sights. I am currently performing a combat audit of the courtroom. I have mapped the 3 exits. I have noted that the bailiff carries his weight on his left side. I am monitoring the rhythmic, shallow breathing of my mother, Lydia, in the front row. While Vane drones on about my abandonment, a sharp, ozone-like scent wafts from a malfunctioning photocopier behind the clerk's desk. It is a sensory bridge, a concussive jolt that pulls me out of the mahogany and marble. Suddenly, I am back in the raw reality of the extraction line. The air isn't sterile. It is thick with the biting, metallic tang of burnt metal and the heavy, sweet scent of diesel fuel. I am kneeling in the freezing mud of a triage tent. The sound of mortar fire is a dull, rhythmic thud in the distance. I remember the weight of the 60-pound trauma ruck on my shoulders, a weight I still feel as a phantom itch against my collarbone. In the memory, I am holding a man's life together with my bare hands. He is an older civilian, his lungs clogged with silt and blood. He is gripping a silver fountain pen with a specific, intricate oak leaf scrollwork on the cap. He can't breathe. I have to use the hollow casing of that very pen to perform a field tracheotomy, while the world around us smells of scorched earth and wet copper. I blink, the courtroom snaps back into focus. Judge Sterling is watching me. He isn't looking at the legal briefs Vane is waving in the air. He is staring at the combat medic badge pinned to my chest. For a fraction of a second, I see a flicker in his eyes, a sharp, personal recognition that defies judicial neutrality. He sees the seed. He knows that pen. He knows the man who owned it. And he knows that the person currently being described as unstable is the only reason that man ever made it home. I thumb the notch on my grandfather's brass compass in my pocket, the compressed spring of the trial tightens. Arthur thinks he is erasing me. He thinks he's burying a ghost. He doesn't realize he's just building the pressure for a release he cannot survive. The judge clears his throat. The sound echoes like a gunshot in the high-ceilinged room. Sergeant Baxter, he says, his voice low and scraping. Your counsel isn't present. Do you wish to respond to the opening statement? I stand up. The movement is economical. Every eye in the room is awake, but I don't buckle. I look past my father. I look past Vane. I look directly at the man on the bench. Not yet, Your Honor, I say. My voice is a flat, steady frequency. I'll let the evidence speak for itself. I sit back down. The silence returns, heavier than before. Across the aisle, Arthur's jaw tightens. He wanted a scene. He wanted tears and trauma. Instead, he got a soldier who knows how to wait. The institutional coldness of the room hasn't changed, but the air feels different. The debt is noted. The countdown has begun. The institutional cold of the courthouse deepens as Julian Vane moves to the next phase of his assault, the digital execution. He stands before the bench, holding a single sheet of paper as if it were a death warrant. The fluorescent lights overhead hum in a steady, aggressive drone that mimics the ringing in my ears after a concussive blast. Your Honor, Vane says, his tone shifting to one of feigned, polite confusion. We attempted to verify the respondent's alleged military history. We issued subpoenas to the Department of the Army for the service records of Cleo Baxter. The official response was unequivocal. No record found for the dates in question. A collective gasp ripples through the gallery. It's a soft, wet sound, like a leak in a pressurized cabin. I see my brother, Leo, shift in his seat. His eyes dart toward the floor, tracking the patterns in the marble. My mother's hand flies to her throat. This is the moment the mirror cracks. To the court, I am no longer just a broken daughter, I am a fraud. My father didn't just ignore my service. He used his political weight to drape a shroud over my existence. He is attempting to delete me in real time. How is that possible, Sergeant Baxter? Judge Sterling asks. His voice is a low, vibrating chord that seems to resonate with the heavy mahogany of my table. He doesn't look away from me. He's waiting for the soldier's stoicism to fracture. He's waiting for me to scream, to defend, to prove Vane's point about my instability. I stand slowly. My movements are economical, no wasted energy. I've spent years moving through environments where overreacting gets people killed. The records are not missing, Your Honor, I say. My voice is a flat, steady frequency. It doesn't shake, it doesn't plead. They are restricted, Level 4 National Security Classification. Vane scoffs, a sharp, ugly bark of a laugh. A medic with top-secret clearance. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of delusional grandiosity we've been describing. Why would the Pentagon lock the files of a simple triage nurse, unless she was being investigated for the very behavior we are citing today? The mystery hangs in the air like a fog. I know the truth. My final mission wasn't simple. It was the Elias Levy breach. It was a disaster relief operation that involved high-level failures the government wasn't ready to own. Someone in the shadows, someone far more powerful than my father, wants that file locked. But Arthur is happy to use that silence to paint me as a ghost. Vane moves to the projection screen. He clicks a remote, and the Baxter estate's financial ledgers appear in cold, glowing blue text. During the years Cleo was absent, the estate faced total foreclosure, Vane sneers. Property taxes were unpaid. The mortgage was in default. It was Arthur Baxter who saved this legacy. He injected over $200,000 of his own private capital into the accounts. I look at the dates on the screen: March 14th, July 22nd, November 2nd. The debt of justice burns in my chest, a hot, localized pressure. I remember those dates. I remember sitting in a mud-caked tent in a transit hub. The air smelled of wet canvas and burnt metal from the generators. I remember the lagging screen of a field laptop as I navigated an encrypted VPN to wire my hazard pay and disability installments to an anonymous escrow account my father told me was the family safety net. The realization is visceral. The bank records on the screen show the money coming from a John Doe, anonymous trust. Arthur isn't just taking the credit. He is claiming the money I earned with my blood was his own secret rainy day fund. He is standing on a floor I paid for, telling the world I was a drain on the family. I look at Arthur. He is staring straight ahead, the gold-plated watch on his wrist catching the afternoon sun. He looks like a man who has won. He thinks he can tell a lie, so big it becomes the horizon. But I see the cracks. I see the way Leo's hands are shaking. I see the judge's eyes lingering on that silver fountain pen on the bench. The mystery isn't just about my records anymore. It's about how much of my life Arthur thought he could steal before I finally decided to stop being a ghost. I sit back down, I don't say a word, I don't have to. The compressed spring of the trial just took another turn. The pressure is mounting, and the air in the room is starting to feel like it's under high tension. Arthur thinks he's burying me. He doesn't realize he's just digging the hole he's eventually going to fall into. The silence in the courtroom following Vane's financial presentation is heavy. It's a suffocating blanket of institutional disbelief. My father, Arthur Baxter, sits with a serene, practiced dignity. He is the very image of the burdened patriarch who has silently carried the weight of his family's survival. The ledgers projected on the screen aren't just numbers anymore. They are the weapon he's using to decapitate my standing in this family. Mr. Baxter, Judge Sterling says. His voice cuts through the stillness like a cold blade. These private injections, you claim they were personal savings. Yes, Your Honor, Arthur replies. His tone is a masterclass in humble resignation. I've spent 40 years building the Baxter name. I wasn't about to let a few years of familial instability wash it all away. I did what any father would do. I sacrificed my own security to keep the roof over our heads while Cleo was away. The debt of justice vibrates in my marrow. I look at the line item for November 2nd, $42,000. I remember that day with a clarity that borders on agony. I was in a transit hub in Kuwait, waiting for a delayed flight. The air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt and the metallic, biting tang of burnt metal from the generators humming nearby. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a 3-day stretch of extraction work that had drained me to the bone. I had just received a hazard pay bonus and a backdated disability stipend for a shrapnel wound in my thigh. I didn't spend a cent on myself. I sat on a dented footlocker and wired every single dollar to the account Arthur told me was the legacy fund. Now, I watch him claim that blood-stained money as his private savings. The validation gap has become a chasm. To the world, he is the savior. To me, he is a ghost haunting the bank accounts of a daughter he's trying to bury. He's taking the credit for the miles I walked and the people I couldn't save. I stand up, my movements are deliberate, tactical. I feel the gaze of the gallery on my back. They expect a breakdown. They expect me to scream about the injustice of it all. I don't give it to them. I keep my face a mask of soldier's stoicism. Your Honor, I say, my voice is a flat, steady frequency. I would like to call a witness to the stand. I turn and look directly at the gallery. I find the person who has been trying to disappear into the shadows of the third row. My brother, Leo Baxter. The room shifts. It's a physical movement, like the air pressure changing before a storm. Leo looks like a man facing a firing squad. He's pale, his eyes darting toward Arthur, looking for a signal. Arthur's eyes flash with a momentary, sharp panic. He didn't expect me to target the golden sun. He thought I would play the victim. He didn't realize I was playing the auditor. As Leo walks toward the stand, his boots clicking on the marble floor, the compressed spring of the trial feels like it's beginning to groan under the pressure. The mystery of the John Doe Trust isn't just about the source of the money anymore. It's about the conspiracy of silence that has been built within these four walls. I watch Leo take the oath. He's shaking. He's the weak point in Arthur's perimeter, and we both know it. Arthur thinks he's built a wall of lies high enough to hide behind. He doesn't realize I've been mapping the structural flaws since the moment I walked in. I sit back down and wait. The institutional coldness is still there, but it's not freezing me out anymore. It's sharpening the edge of what's coming next. Arthur thinks he's the architect of this truth. He's about to find out what happens when the foundation is built on someone else's blood. Leo Baxter sits in the witness stand like a man made of glass. He is fragile and transparent, the living embodiment of the toll my father's expectations take on a soul. While I was forged in the fire of the frontline, Leo was slowly crushed by the institutional coldness of Arthur's ambition. He looks like he hasn't slept in weeks. His eyes are bloodshot, fixed on the mahogany grain of the railing, as if it's the only thing keeping him upright. I stand in the center of the courtroom. I don't use the aggressive, pacing posture of a lawyer. I use the calm, unblinking focus of a medic assessing a sucking chest wound. The room is silent, save for the rhythmic, distant hum of the HVAC. Leo, I begin. My voice is a low, steady frequency. You were the one on the ground while I was away. You were the steward of the Baxter legacy. I did my best, Cleo, he stammers. His eyes flick toward Arthur, looking for a script, a signal, a lifeline. My father remains a statue of charcoal wool and silver hair. You did, I say softly. In fact, you did so well that you managed to buy a brand new, top-of-the-line heavy-duty truck last August. A $60,000 vehicle. How did a struggling estate manager afford that, Leo? Especially when the ledgers say we were on the verge of foreclosure. It was a gift, Julian Vane interjects. His voice is a sharp bark, an attempt to startle me. A father rewarding a loyal son for his dedication during a crisis. A gift, I repeat. I walk closer to the stand. I can smell the stale coffee and nervous sweat coming off my brother. Interesting, because the registration for that vehicle, which I pulled from the public record last night, lists the payment source as a digital authorization from a Baxter military pension account. My account, Leo. The courtroom goes airless. This is the cracks in the mirror moment. The gallery doesn't just see a sibling rivalry anymore. They see a systematic siphoning of my life. Leo looks like he might shatter. Did Dad tell you it was your money, Leo? Or did you just decide that since I was a ghost, I didn't need a future? I didn't know, Leo blurts out. His voice cracks, a high, panicked sound that echoes off the marble pillars. Dad said, he said you weren't coming back. He said the money was just sitting there, and the estate needed a reliable vehicle for the winter. He said it was for the good of the family. The twist hits the room like a concussive jolt. Arthur Baxter isn't just a liar. He is a fence, distributing the spoils of his daughter's service to buy the loyalty of the son he could actually control. I don't shout, I don't cry, I let the silence do the work. I watch the realization settle over the gallery. I watch my mother's face go from confusion to a jagged, heartbreaking clarity. While Vane tries to recover, my eyes catch the glint of the silver fountain pen on Judge Sterling's bench. The light hits the oak leaf scrollwork, and for a split second, the smell of burnt metal, ozone, and scorched copper returns. It's a phantom trigger, a reminder of the night I earned the money Leo spent. I remember the weight of the man I saved, the heat of the floodwater, and the absolute certainty that I was doing it for a home that was currently being sold out from under me by the people I loved. I turn to face my father. He is staring at Leo with a cold, predatory fury, but the damage is done. The spring hasn't just tightened, it has begun to fracture the very foundation of the Baxter name. No further questions, Your Honor, I say. I sit back down. The mahogany table feels cold under my palms. I am the auditor now, and the Baxter family is finally being forced to look at the true cost of their legacy. The validation gap is closing, and for the first time, the audience isn't looking at me with pity. They are looking at Arthur with the kind of horror reserved for a man who eats his own. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifts from a financial autopsy to something far more visceral. The compressed spring of the trial is now vibrating with a frequency that makes the mahogany tables feel like they are humming. My mother, Lydia Baxter, is called to the stand. She walks with a fragile, ghost-like grace. She is a woman who has spent 3 years mourning a daughter who is still breathing. Mrs. Baxter, Julian Vane says. He softens his predatory baritone into something meant to sound like empathy. It's an insult to the room. The defense has painted a picture of a devoted daughter, but the truth is simpler, isn't it? Cleo vanished. No phone calls on your birthday, no letters for Christmas. For 3 years, your daughter left you in a silence so profound it felt like a grave. Lydia looks at me, her lower lip trembles. Her eyes are watery, fixed on the brass buttons of my uniform. I waited, she whispers. Every morning, I walked to the mailbox at the end of the drive. I thought if I just hoped hard enough I'd see her handwriting, but the box was always empty, just bills and catalogs. Arthur told me that Cleo had found a new life, one that didn't have room for us. The debt of justice in my chest feels like a physical heat. It's a slow burn, localized and intense. I stand up, I reach into my leather case. I don't pull out a legal brief or a sworn affidavit. I pull out a high-resolution, GPS-tagged photograph printed on glossy paper. Mom, I say, my voice is a low, steady frequency. It cuts through the institutional coldness of the room like a tactical blade. I want you to look at this photo. It was taken 18 months ago. Do you recognize that corner of the attic, behind the loose floorboard near the chimney? Lydia squints at the image. Her hand shakes as she takes the paper. That's where we used to hide the Christmas presents, when you were little. I sent 64 letters, Mom. When I realized they weren't reaching you, I used a 48-hour leave to fly into the local airfield. I didn't come to the front door. I was still wearing the dust of a theater I couldn't talk about. I smelled like diesel and burnt metal. I slipped into the house through the cellar at 3:00 a.m. I left a blue leather journal in that hiding spot. It contained every unsent letter, every thought I had about you while I was kneeling in the mud. The courtroom goes airless. The silence is no longer a vacuum, it's a weight. I took this photo with a microdrone 3 days ago through the attic vent. I continue, my eyes moving to the judge. I wanted to see if you'd found it, but you hadn't, because someone had placed a heavy trunk, Arthur's trunk, directly over that floorboard. The twist hits the gallery like a concussive jolt. I watch the realization break over my mother's face. She looks at Arthur. He sits perfectly still, his charcoal suit immaculate, but the silver hair no longer looks like a crown. It looks like a shroud. Arthur didn't just intercept my mail. He buried my voice in the one place he knew my mother would never look. He manufactured her grief to ensure her compliance. He turned her love into a weapon and pointed it at my empty chair. Lydia looks back at me. For the first time in 30 years, the structure of her marriage isn't a shelter, it's a cage. And the door just got kicked in. I sit down. I don't need to say anything else. My internal monologue is a rhythmic tally of the damage done. Arthur wanted to talk about abandonment. Now the room is talking about a heist. He didn't just steal my money or my records. He stole the 3 years my mother spent thinking her only daughter had forgotten her. The institutional coldness is still there, but the smell of lemon polish is being overtaken by the ozone of a storm. The spring has taken another turn. The pressure is nearing the breaking point. I look at the judge. He is staring at the photo, then at Arthur. The debt is being calculated, and the interest is staggering. The escalation of the trial moves from the emotional to the psychological. Julian Vane is sweating. I can see the darkened patches on his silk tie. He senses the narrative slipping through his fingers, so he pivots. He goes for the jugular, the instability play. He produces a security recording from a neighbor's property. It's an audio file captured on a frigid night 6 months ago. Let's listen to the hero at home, Vane sneers. The recording begins. It is a cacophony of shouting. My voice is raw, it's frantic. It echoes across the Baxter acreage, jagged and ugly. I am barking orders, my tone the same one I used when the world was ending. To the untrained ear, it sounds like a classic PTSD episode. A woman lost in the dark, screaming at ghosts that only she can see. I sit through the playback, my pulse spikes. I feel the concussive jolt of the memory hitting me, a physical impact in my chest. But I don't break. I keep my hands flat on the table, the knuckles white against the mahogany. Soldier's stoicism is more than a defense, it's a cage for the adrenaline. I wait for the silence to return to the room before I move. Your Honor, I say, I stand slowly. I would like the court to replay the last 10 seconds of that recording, but this time, I want the bailiff to run it through the audio filter. Isolate the high-frequency background noise. The judge nods. He looks curious. Vane looks like he wants to object, but the judge's eyes are already on the technician. The audio plays again. It's thinner this time, stripped down. Beneath the sound of my voice, there is a rhythmic metallic hiss, then a sharp, staccato crackling. That isn't the sound of a breakdown, Your Honor, I say. My voice cuts through the tension like a scalpel. That is the sound of a ruptured oxygen tank on a portable welder. There was a magnesium fire in the North Barn that night. One my brother started because he was trying to fix a tractor while intoxicated. I let the words hang. I look at Leo. He's staring at his shoes. I wasn't screaming at ghosts, I continue. I was performing an emergency suppression and extraction. I saved Leo's life. The only reason there isn't an insurance claim or a fire department report is because Arthur realized a fire would look bad for the legacy. He'd rather the world think I'm crazy than admit his golden son almost turned the estate to ash. The validation gap closes another inch. It's a physical sensation, like a wound being stitched closed. The gallery no longer sees a woman haunted by the past. They see a woman being hunted by her family's need for a scapegoat. The ozone smell of the courtroom, the one that started when the HVAC kicked on, suddenly feels sharper. It's the same smell as that night. The smell of burnt metal and melting plastic. My father is staring at me, his face a mask of charcoal-colored fury. He hasn't won a single point since I stood up. I look at Judge Sterling. He is leaning forward. His eyes are fixed on me with a terrifyingly sharp intensity. He isn't looking at me as a defendant anymore. He's looking at me as a witness. The compressed spring is no longer just groaning. It is at maximum tension. The pressure in the room is so high I can almost feel the air vibrating. Arthur wanted to use my service as a weapon to strip my inheritance. He didn't realize that a medic doesn't just treat wounds. A medic finds the source of the infection, and I just found the heart of his. I sit down, the silence is absolute, no one is breathing, we are all just waiting for the snap. D-stroke. The air, already thin and cold, is suddenly punctured by a sharp, metallic odor. The building's antiquated heating system has kicked on, venting a scent of scorched copper and hot dust into the room. For the gallery, it is a minor annoyance. For me, it is a sensory bridge. The mahogany walls of the Portsmouth courthouse dissolve into a gray, churning sky. I am back in the raw reality of the Elias levee breach. The air here doesn't smell of wax. It is a thick, suffocating soup of rain, ozone, and the unmistakable, biting tang of burnt metal from the transformers that have just been swallowed by the flood. I am chest-deep in the rising silt. The current is a physical weight trying to tear my boots from the mud. I am holding a man's head above the water. He is a civilian, older. He's wearing a heavy wool coat that has become a lead weight, dragging him down. His face is a mask of blue-tinged gray. His airway is obstructed by the very silt that is trying to drown us both. I have no surgical kit. It was swept away 300 yards back when the levee wall gave. The smell, I whisper. My voice is stripped of its tactical veneer. I don't realize I'm speaking out loud until the court reporter's keys stop clicking. The silence that follows is absolute. It was like copper and scorched earth. The water was so loud it sounded like an engine. I reach into the memory. I reach into the man's pocket. I find it, the silver fountain pen. I remember the weight of it, the cold assurance of the metal. I used the hollow casing to perform a field tracheotomy, the oak leaf scrollwork on the cap biting into my palm as I pressed down into his throat. He told me he had to get home, I continue. My eyes are fixed on a distant point beyond the judge's bench. He said he had a protege who was about to be sworn in. He said he couldn't miss it. He gave me the pen because he said I'd saved more than just a man. I'd saved a legacy. A sharp, rhythmic clack echoes through the chamber. I look up. Judge Sterling has dropped his pen. It's rolling across the bench, but he doesn't reach for it. He is staring at me. His face is a ghostly shade of gray, the color of wet ash. He slowly reaches out and touches the silver fountain pen resting on his own bench, the one I noticed during the first hour of the trial. Describe the scrollwork on the cap, Sergeant Baxter, the judge commands. His voice is no longer a judicial drone. It is a raw, trembling wire. The institutional coldness has evaporated, replaced by a heat that radiates from the bench. Oak leaves, I say. My voice is steady, a soldier reporting facts. Intertwined with a single laurel branch. The initials AS are engraved on the clip, Arthur Sterling. He told me it was a gift. The judge looks at the pen, then he looks at the red-tabbed file in his hands. Finally, he looks at my father. Arthur Baxter is frozen. The mirror hasn't just cracked, it has shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. The wild card has been played, and it didn't come from a legal brief. It came from a flooded ditch in the middle of a national disaster. The man I saved wasn't just a civilian. He was the judge's mentor, the man who taught him the law. The man who gave him that pen. The validation gap isn't just closing, it is being obliterated. I can see the debt of justice reflecting in the judge's eyes. He knows. He knows that the unstable ghost, sitting at the respondent's table, is the only reason his mentor didn't drown in the silt. I sit back, I don't need to say another word. The compressed spring is at the point of no return. Arthur wanted to talk about legacies. He's about to find out what happens when you try to bury one that someone else fought to save. The snap of the spring isn't a loud explosion. It is the terrifying, absolute silence that follows the judge's command for my father to stand. Arthur Baxter looks small. For the first time in my life, the dominant patriarch appears fragile. His institutional coldness is melting into a cold, panicked sweat. He's staring at the silver pen on the bench as if it's a live grenade. Mr. Vane, Judge Sterling begins. His voice is a low, vibrating chord of restrained fury. You spent the last 3 days arguing that there is no record of this woman's service. You suggested she was a ghost, a fraud, a psychotic break in a uniform. The judge reaches for the red-tabbed dossier. He doesn't just open it, he breaks the wax seal with a finality that echoes like a gunshot in the high-ceilinged room. The sound of the tearing paper is crisp, violent. I didn't need a subpoena to find this record, the judge says, turning a page, because I've had a copy of this file in my private safe for 18 months. I am the one who flagged it as restricted. Not to hide a psychotic break, Mr. Baxter, but to protect the integrity of a high-level rescue operation that involved the life of a man who was like a father to me. Arthur tries to speak. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. He looks like he's suffocating on the very air he used to command. The judge begins to read. He doesn't read the dry, bureaucratic headers. He reads the narrative. He reads about the Ilia's levee breach. He reads the words extreme heroism, tactical brilliance, and sacrifice above and beyond. He reads the part where I stayed in the rising silt for 6 hours after my unit was ordered to withdraw, because I wouldn't leave a trapped civilian to drown in the dark. While he reads, the phantom scent of burnt metal, that sharp, ozone and copper tang fills my head. I can feel the vibration of the floodwater in my marrow. I remember the exact moment. The silver pen clicked against the civilian's teeth as I cleared his airway. I remember the weight of the man, the sound of the levee groaning, and the absolute certainty that I was dead. Your client didn't just ignore his daughter's service, Mr. Vane, Sterling says, his eyes burning into my father's. He actively sought to erase it to settle a property dispute. He treated a soldier's hazard pay as his personal ATM and her trauma as a legal loophole. The validation gap is gone. It didn't just close, it was vaporized. The gallery is no longer looking at the broken girl with pity or suspicion. They are looking at the veteran, who saved a pillar of their community, while her father was busy moving her medals into a trunk in the attic. I look at Arthur. He is staring at the silver pen on the bench. He's finally realizing that the one thing he couldn't buy, bury, or litigate was the gratitude of a dying man. He tried to build a cage out of my silence, but he forgot that a soldier knows how to wait for the breach. The debt of justice is no longer a metaphor. It is a physical presence in the room, heavy and undeniable. I feel the weight of the compressed spring finally leave my shoulders. The pressure that has been crushing my lungs for 3 years is gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Sergeant Baxter, the judge says, his voice softening just a fraction. The court recognizes your service, and this court recognizes the truth. I don't cry, I don't cheer, I just breathe. I keep my hands flat on the mahogany table. My internal monologue is a rhythmic, steady count, the cadence of a soldier who has reached the objective. Arthur is still standing, but he's already a ghost. He just hasn't realized the lights have been turned off yet. The judge turns to my father one last time. Mr. Baxter, I suggest you sit down, we are far from finished. The countdown has reached 0, the spring has uncoiled, and the Baxter legacy is currently lying in ruins on the courtroom floor. The judge's gavel doesn't fall with a bang. It drops with the finality of a guillotine. The echo travels up the marble pillars, cold and absolute. The institutional coldness of the courtroom has shifted. It is no longer a freezer designed to preserve my father's lies. It has become a furnace, incinerating the carefully constructed facade of the Baxter legacy. The court finds in favor of the respondent, Cleo Baxter, Judge Sterling announces. His voice is stripped of the professional neutrality he maintained for days. It is the voice of a man settling a moral debt. It carries the weight of the silver pen sitting on his bench, the weight of a life saved in the silt. The evidence of systematic fraud, interception of military communications, and the unauthorized siphoning of hazard pay is not merely a civil matter, he continues, his eyes boring into my father. It is a profound betrayal of trust and service. This court will not be a silent partner to it. The debt of justice is finally paid, but the currency is heavy. I stand up. My joints feel stiff, like they've been locked in a brace for 3 years. I walk toward the respondent's table. Julian Vane is frantically packing his briefcase. His hands are shaking. He won't meet my eyes. He's already mentally drafting the press release to distance himself from the wreckage. Arthur Baxter is slumped in his chair. The dominant patriarch has shrunk. The charcoal wool of his suit suddenly looks 3 sizes too big. He looks like a man who just realized the watch he spent his life polishing, his reputation, his control, has finally run out of time. I reach into my pocket. My fingers find the notched brass compass. I pull it out and set it on the mahogany table in front of him. I place it right next to his gold-plated heirloom watch. The 2 objects look like relics from different centuries. One is for show, the other is for finding a way out of the dark. You were so worried about how the Baxter name looked on a ledger, Arthur, I say. My voice is a low, tactical frequency. I don't need to shout. The room is so quiet I can hear the ticking of his watch. You spent 3 years counting the minutes I was gone. You were waiting for me to be declared dead so you could inherit the spoils of a war you didn't have the guts to fight. Arthur looks at the compass, then he looks at me, his eyes are hollow. You looked at the time, I tell him, the memory of the burnt metal sent from the levee flickering one last time in my mind. I looked at the direction. You can keep the watch, Arthur, I'm taking the house. The twist is visceral. It's not just a legal victory, it's a reclamation of territory. I don't wait for him to respond. There's nothing left to say. I turn and walk toward the back of the courtroom. The boots of my class as click against the marble, a rhythmic, steady cadence. As I pass the front row, I reach out and take my mother's hand. Her fingers are cold, but she grips mine with a strength I haven't felt since I was a child. She stands up with me. We don't look back at the charcoal suit or the silver hair. The spring has uncoiled. The force of it has leveled the world Arthur built, leaving nothing but the truth standing in the debris. I walk through the double doors and out into the hallway. The air here is warmer. It smells like the rain that's starting to hit the pavement outside. I'm not a ghost anymore. I'm the owner of the ground I'm standing on. The drive back to the Baxter estate is quiet. I roll the windows down, letting the cool, damp air of the Portsmouth evening wash over me. It is a relief. The institutional coldness of the courtroom is a mile behind us, left in the rearview with the ghosts of Arthur's legal team. The air out here is different. It smells of salt, pine, and the heavy promise of an incoming coastal storm, the civilized world finally mixing with the raw, honest scent of the ground. The hum of the engine is the only thing filling the space where the courtroom's noise used to live. No baritone lies, no scratching pens, just the tires on the asphalt. I turn into the long gravel drive. The headlights sweep across the white fence. It's still warped in places. The boards are gray and weathered, neglected while Arthur was busy curating his image. Winning a court case doesn't fix a broken rail. It doesn't paint a barn, but it gives you the right to pick up the hammer. I find my brother Leo standing by the north barn. He isn't hiding. He isn't holding a glass of scotch. He's holding a crowbar. He is prying away the charred, blackened wood from the magnesium fire. The physical evidence of the night. He almost died, and the night Arthur tried to use to prove I was broken. Leo looks at me as I kill the engine. For the first time in my life, he doesn't look toward the main house for Arthur's permission to speak. I found the journal, Cleo, he says. His voice is rough but steady. I moved the trunk. Mom's inside reading it now. The validation gap is finally closed. The architecture of truth is being rebuilt, one board at a time. I don't go inside yet. I walk out to the edge of the property, where the manicured lawn gives way to the wild marsh. I pull the brass compass from my pocket. I thumb the notch I carved into the side during a 48-hour trek in the Hindu Kush. I watch the needle settle. It points north, constant, certain. It doesn't care about subpoenas or restricted files. It just tells the truth about where you are. I think about the extraction line. I think about the man I saved. Sometimes, if I breathe in too fast, I can still taste that phantom scent of burnt metal, the ozone of the levee breach, and the copper tang of the field tracheotomy. I remember the weight of the silver pen. I remember the absolute certainty, as the water rose to my chin, that I would never see this marsh again. I was wrong. Arthur wanted to litigate my identity. He wanted to weigh my trauma on a scale and find it wanting. He failed because he didn't realize that my identity was never something that could be stolen. It wasn't found in a red-tabbed file or a commendation for valor. It was built in the minutes when the world was ending, and I chose to stay. The compressed spring has uncoiled, and in its wake, it has left a profound, earned clarity. I am no longer a ghost medic. I am not an unstable daughter. I am Cleo Baxter. I am a veteran of a war that happened in the mud and a war that happened in the marble, and I won both. I turn back toward the house. The lights are on in the kitchen, casting a warm, yellow glow onto the gravel. The smell of wood smoke and rain is the only thing in my lungs. The compass is steady. The guard is off duty. I'm home, and this time I'm the one holding the keys. The measure of a life is rarely found in the ledgers we keep or the titles we inherited. True value exists in the quiet, invisible architecture of our actions when the world isn't watching, in the sacrifices made without the promise of a trophy, and the integrity held when it would be easier to let it shatter. We often mistake power for the ability to silence others, yet real strength is found in the endurance of the truth. You cannot bury the sun, you can only wait for the clouds to break. Respect is not a currency to be traded, but a fundamental acknowledgement of the hidden wars every person carries. We walk past strangers every day who are veterans of private storms, healers of unseen wounds, and guardians of legacies they never speak of. To look at another human being and see only their utility or their flaws is a failure of the soul. The most profound debt we owe one another is not one of money, but of recognition, the simple, radical act of seeing a person for the weight they have carried and the ground they have held. Philosophy teaches us that character is fate. If we build our lives on the shifting sands of deception, the tide will eventually claim the foundation. But if we forge ourselves in the heat of service and the cold steel of honesty, we become a landmark that no storm can move. We are all, in our own way, navigators in the dark, and the only compass that never fails is the one that points toward our own humanity. Justice is not always a gavel strike in a marble room. Sometimes, it is the quiet peace of finally standing on ground that is truly your own. Thank you for walking through this journey with me. If this story spoke to you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective adds the final layer to the narrative. If you want to see more content that explores the grit and grace of the human spirit, please consider following and subscribing to the channel. Your support keeps these stories alive. Until the next chapter, keep your compass steady.